This is a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station.
BFM 89.9, the business station. Good morning, it's me, Rich Bradbury, and welcome to The Workplace, the show where we tap into insights to empower your people and to elevate your organization. Now, here's a question. When does tough management cross the line into bullying? In the past few months, stories about toxic workplaces and intimidation at work have been making the rounds again. And it's not just in the headlines. A new Ipsos Malaysia report reveals that 2/3 of Malaysians or someone in their family have experienced bullying. Most of it happens in schools and increasingly at work. Verbal abuse still tops the list, but digital and social bullying are catching up fast. Yet, despite how common it is, very few victims ever report it to HR or the authorities. So how bad has it really gotten? Are we even able to recognize bullying when it happens around us? Today, we'll be looking at the findings of the report and talk about what can actually be done to create safer, kinder workspaces. And joining me for this conversation is Sao Hang. She is the Senior Client Officer at Ipsos Malaysia, and Hetal Doshi, the Organizational Psychologist at CEO at O-Psych. And if you have any thoughts or questions, you can get us on our U-Mobile WhatsApp number, 018-789-8899, or reach out to us on X. We are at BFM Radio. Sao Hang, Hetal, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you both?
Good. I'm really good as well. Interesting topic for sure.
Certainly an interesting topic for this morning. Now, Sao Hang, I guess before we get into the findings, just give me a little brief walkthrough about how this study was put together in terms of the key methodologies.
Yep. So actually this study was conducted using a combination of both quantitative survey as well as a social listening approach. So we start with the social listening approach, which it allows us to analyze the online conversation among the public to see actually how people talking about the bullying issue in the real time. And then after that, we actually utilizing the quantitative survey to capture the nationally represented data to really understand how widespread the bullying is actually, and also the form that it takes. So actually together, this methodology will provide us the skill and also the context and give us the fuller picture of the bullying landscape in Malaysia.
When you are using these social media or social listening tools, are they in multiple languages or are they only in one language?
Yep. So it's actually, being in Malaysia, people actually are free to post anything in any languages.
Yeah.
So our social listening approach allows us to capture the data across different languages.
Across all different languages.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also it captures the data for the past 1 year, anything that which is related to bullying topic from the digital platform, not just the social media, including some of the online forum as well.
Okay. Now then, so this report shows that, as I mentioned in the introduction there, 2/3 of Malaysians or their family members have experienced bullying. And it seemingly happens most often in schools and workplaces. And this is a question, I guess, to both of you. And I want to start with you, Sao Hang.
Yep.
What does that tell us about how deeply ingrained this problem is in Malaysian society?
I think the data clearly shows that when it comes to bullying, right, it isn't limited just to one place or even one group. It really cut across gender, age group, or even any setting. So actually, what it really tells us is that bullying has become somewhat, I think, normalized in our daily environment. So it can happen in the school, at the workplace, or even on the social space. I think a very strong message that we want to deliver through this insight is that it really highlight, I think, the need for a consistent education and also the awareness building across different stages of life among Malaysia in this country.
Same question to you, Hetal.
Yeah, well, I think what it's telling us is definitely that it's more a power culture rather than a empathy culture, even though we keep talking about empathy. And I love how you started by saying, how do we create better workplaces that are kinder? But for the ones that are, at least in the workplace, the end goal of an organization is not about kindness. End goal of an organization is about power and performance. And so I think that's constantly perpetuated. But I think the biggest, when we talk about bullying, there's a lot of flack around it because what does it actually mean? And I think starting out with the definition is very critical because otherwise we may misinterpret and talk about aggression as opposed to bullying. We might talk about performance management as opposed to bullying. So if I could just share a little bit, I thought that helped me a lot. So maybe this could as well. So this is the operational definition. Bullying is a dysfunctional and destructive goal-oriented behavior. So it's very intentional and it harms another within the context of power imbalance. So there has to be power imbalance in that particular situation to the point where the person on the receiving end begins to develop feelings of helplessness. And so there are three characteristics of a bully. Number one, they tend to spin the truth and they justify their actions, i.e. for the greater good. They're doing this out of the goodness of their heart rather than, any reason as to why you think they have been behaving badly. The second would be that there is an apparent lack of concern of the well-being of the person that they're talking about. And thirdly, there is a subtle, if not a direct form of affecting the larger environment or the organizational culture as well. So it has to fit these criteria in order for it to be considered bullying as opposed to anything else. Yeah.
Now, interestingly then, when we looked at the report, 41% of Malaysians identified the workplace as a bullying setting. But this study also shows that online conversations rarely focus on this setting compared to school or cyberbullying. Why do you think workplace bullying receives less public attention despite it being so common?
Well, I just want to bring up like a interesting case study. Well, it's not interesting; it's actually quite shocking. So this was about a telecommunications company in France. I won't mention the name, but if you put those two together, you'd know which organization it is. So what happened was that they were restructuring, and this was in early 2000s, if I'm not wrong, or mid 2000s. They were restructuring, and they used institutional harassment, or i.e. Moral harassment, to annoy and bully employees to the point of them eventually jumping off the windows of the office.
What?
Yeah, so they felt so much of pressure during the restructuring. The ultimate aim, because obviously in France, you're not allowed to outplace employees. There's heavy employee laws to protect employees, right? So this was called Plan Next. So actually it was a planned approach, therefore it constitutes bullying. It was a planned approach to cut down about 22,000 jobs. And one of their major strategies was institutionalized harassment. Putting people down, belittling them repeatedly over a period of time to the point where the individuals had experiences of learned helplessness. And through that, I think the report shows, I think, close to about 1935 employees jumping off the windows. And that would be one format of suicide, and then there were others as well. Now, coming back to why people do not report, this happened in mid-2000, and the entire legal process went up until 2019. So it was at least about maybe 15 odd years around there. So it was 15, I might be wrong, but a very long period of time, over a decade before it went to court. And only in 2019, very recently actually, were the top executives found guilty and imprisoned. Not death sentence or anything. So in essence, the major reasons is because silence is obviously not something that is... silence is rewarded, because if you just keep quiet, put your head down, move on with it, find another organization to work for, that problem ends. If you report you never know, because you're already feeling out of control. Now there are going to be so many more things out of your control as well. Yeah.
So do you find the same thing? Why do you think it's not spoken about so much?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to echo what Heta mentioned. So for me, I feel that there are basically two key reasons why actually the mention of the workplace bullying is so low compared to what actually happened out there. I think one's very key observation is that compared to other type of bullying, workplace bullying actually can be very subtle. Right? It always happens I think behind a closed door. So it's not about something as obvious as shouting or physical aggression, but it can be just exclusion or unfair treatment or even being undermined by the superior.
Right.
But I think what is more concerning is about the strong cultural norm on the hierarchy and also the respect for authority, especially when it comes to the Asian markets, which this could be I think the key reason behind why a lot of employees or people actually they're reluctant to label the negative workplace like experience as a bullying. And when it comes to I think social media, whilst people actually feel free to share, even open to share, but when it comes to anything that related to I think any experience that when it comes to workplace and also related to the company, usually they are actually keeping it behind the closed doors. And also I think sometimes it's also because I think that is a very gray area that's like they maybe see as part of I think professional life instead of misconduct. Hence, that is one of the key reasons why there is a lacking of public discussions, while actually it's quite prevalent out there.
Yeah. Okay, it's time for us to take a short break, folks. You are listening to The Workplace. It's the show where we tap into the insights to empower your people and to help elevate your organization. I'm here in the studio with Sao Fang, the Senior Client Officer at Ipsos Malaysia, and Hetal Doshi, Organizational Psychologist and CEO at O-Psych. We're talking about the perception and attitude of Malaysians towards workplace bullying. Not just in the workplace, though, clearly. It's me, Rich Bradbury. We'll be right back after a few messages. Do keep it here on BFM 89.9, the business station.
Break from monotony. BFM 89.9.
BFM 89.9, the business station. Welcome back to The Workplace. This is the show where we tap into insights to help empower your people and to elevate your organization. I'm here in the studio with Sao Fang, Senior Client Officer at Ipsos Malaysia, and Hetal Doshi, Organizational Psychologist and CEO at O-Psych. We're talking about the perceptions and attitudes of Malaysians towards bullying, particularly workplace bullying. And this is based on a recent report released by Ipsos, which suggests 2/3 of Malaysians or their family have faced bullying, primarily in schools and in workplaces. Hetal, the data shows that nearly half of all victims only turn to friends or family for help. Very few reported to HR or management or even the authorities. From your standpoint then, why do you think so many people still stay silent? And what does that say about the psychological safety in our workplaces?
Yeah, it's super interesting because something recently happened within my own team. And this person had experienced bullying / sexual harassment from a particular participant in a workshop that we were facilitating. And even at a company like O-Psych, where we talk about it, where we educate companies about it, my team member did not feel comfortable coming to me directly and actually brought it up as a funny story to her other team members, i.e. the rest of the team. And she herself was not able to process exactly what had happened to her and tuned it into the effect of maybe something funny happened. So it was the rest of the team that actually told her, no, this is not right. Make sure you tell Hetal about it. And so that was really shocking. Why do people stay silent? Because I think the why bother effect. Why bother? What's going to happen to me after this?
It'll make no difference if I say anything.
It's not going to make any difference. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about a couple of studies that were done, or maybe I'll just share one study. This is about how a particular, this study where participants were asked to state how long a particular line was. Okay, so imagine drawing a line and they ask, how long do you think this line is? They take a ruler and then they measure it and they say it's 9 inches long. And then the rest of the people around them, or one or two of them, say, oh no, it's 10 inches long. And this person goes, no, it's 9 inches wrong. And then they're like, nope, it's 10 inches. So when authority begins, or people around them begin to say, nope, it's wrong, they eventually, when they ask the third time, how long is it? They're like, it's 10 inches long.
They conform.
Exactly. So there's a conformity bias of sorts, because the two major fear that human beings have is the fear of failure and the fear of rejection. The idea that I could be isolated after this and talked about behind my back is more terrifying than anything that you could ever imagine. Affects the nervous system to the point of where either you become silent or you become violent. And most of the time, silence works better because violence is not going to be valuable for you or as much as silence would be.
I've seen other examples of that same study where somebody walks into a lift and they're by themselves in the lift, a whole bunch of people come into the lift, and instead of facing the door, they turn towards the back of the elevator.
Right.
And then the person who stood in the middle facing the doors
Suddenly
turns around and starts facing the
Yeah.
rear of the
Yeah.
elevator. So it just
Yeah.
goes to show that, group thought can really have this kind of effect on somebody very,
Yeah.
very strong.
And interestingly, on top of that, you have the bystander effect.
Yeah.
So imagine there are other people watching it and knowing that that person is right.
Yeah.
The bystanders don't often say anything at all because they all assume that it would be the responsibility of somebody else to take action, which is why not only is it that in the case of what happened with my team, I'm very proud of the team members who then notice that something is wrong. Because when you're in the eye of the storm, it's like a whirlwind
Yeah,
of an
yeah.
experience where like, did that just happen to me?
Yeah.
Is that correct? And it's when the bystanders actually start taking action, which most of the time it will never happen because collective silence feels safer than standing out.
Right. Saofang, I just want to go back to the study just a little bit. And the study showed that verbal bullying still dominates, but digital and social forms of bullying are catching up. Can you give me some insights here from the report on the different mediums for digital and social bullying?
Yep. So I think from the data it shows that verbal bullying is still is still the most common one among students. But having said that, the digital and social bullying are actually like growing and also like growing fast. So I would actually like associate to the early exposure to the social media,
Right.
especially when it comes to children.
Yeah.
So actually, I think like kids these days, they really like face the cyberbullying even like before the adulthood. And when it comes to the social bullying, it usually happen like through the social medias, like Instagram or TikTok, and what happened is like they face the bullying, like public like shaming or even name calling or even like exclusions like online from their friends in the social media like platform in the group. And I think not just on the social media, what happened is because I think when it comes to the digital platform, right, that could be happen in the smaller circles. Like for example, these days we have a lot of like maybe the group chat even within the kids and even on the online community like a forum. What happened is like a lot of kids or even people are being mocked or even left out in this digital platform. So what I want to highlight is that yes, I think verbal bullying, no doubt that is still the most common like amongst like I think all different type of bullying among the kids. But I think we really need to watch out like how fast that the digital and also the social bullying are really growing. They are really growing very fast. And why we need to really pay attention to the digital or social bullying is because like it's like really harmful that how quickly this kind of behavior are spreading.
That's true.
Yeah. And also the thing is when something that happened in the school actually can shut down after they reach home. But when it comes to the digital bullying, right, it's like they can't escape.
It's
They go
24/7.
online. Exactly. Yeah. And also it will have like huge impact when it comes to the emotional and also the mental wellness.
One of the problems with that is, as a parent, you might think, maybe I'll take the phone away from them for a while, and kind of get them out of that thing. But if you do that, and they go back to school without a digital device, they then become ostracized because they don't have a digital device. And then they end up in that same position. So I assume the only way to solve that is to stop everybody from having a digital device in schools, which is something that I don't think is a practical solution.
True. And I mean, like, as a parent, I would think that, keeping the devices away from the kids is not really the solution.
Yeah.
Because I think we really need to help them and guide them and educate them how to manage the bullying situation. Because if they don't manage it when they're in the school, they still have to face it when it comes to the workplace. I think that is also one of the reasons why a lot of people or employees actually, they don't know how to manage it when the bullying happens at their workplace.
Well, let's have both of your thoughts on this next question then, just before we take a break. How do you think technology and hybrid work culture has changed how bullying shows up in the modern workplace? And do you think organizations are equipped to deal with that shift? I'll start off with you, Hetal, and then over to you, Saofang.
Yeah, I think... Okay, so we run something called the People at Work Index, and in that, what was interesting wasn't whether or not it was hybrid culture, hybrid workplace, or whether it was a physical workplace. It didn't matter so much the gender, the age group, the job level, the job type. The largest variance in whether in a particular demography for bullying was departments and divisions. So I would, if it is okay, I mean, definitely happy to go back to the hybrid work environment only because it's slightly harder to detect because social cues, verbal cues, tonality is all kind of diluted a little bit, right? You can't really have a sense of that. But psychologically, it's the case of not just bad apples, but a bad barrel of apples and how that environment causes this tolerance of toxicity or even an excitement and enjoyment of toxicity. So in a particular study that was done, it's called The Psychology of Evil. I mean, wow, what a title, right? In that particular study, it was interesting to note that first, students were asked to take part in it, and the students were divided into two groups. First, you could be the prisoner, and the other one would be the guard. So when you were assigned the title of guard, you then ended up the power paradox. Suddenly you have this power that runs through your veins and you know exactly how to behave. And the prisoners were then asked to switch. And the prisoners who ended up saying they were bullied, they were harassed, when they took on the position of the guard, they ended up behaving the same way. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a culture of really ensuring that the environment does not condone or tolerate that level of toxicity, and that there's a lot of agreements in place as to how one should behave and how one should not behave. And my God, Richard, I have to tell you, it's getting tougher and tougher. Earlier in the days, I used to have 3 levels of agreement, just 3 points of agreement about how we should behave, how we shouldn't behave. It's gone up to 12 now.
Wow.
Yeah, just because there's so many small little subtle things that people can say and do and misinterpret, that to create the right culture or the barrel to prevent more bad apples from happening, you need to explicitly have more of these conversations. Maybe it's a good thing. I'm not sure. So not much to say about digital culture. I think it's the same. It's culture. It's like a cult. It's like bacteria and how it spreads. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Xiaofang?
I think the digital or social bullying happen among the children. So I think it's the same thing that happened to the workplace when there is a more involvement of technology or even the hybrid work environment. Because I think all this technology or digital platform, actually it becomes a new ways of bullying that which happen actually quietly. In
a new avenue that the bully can use almost.
Exactly. So I mean maybe being left out in the meeting or not in the group chats or receiving passive aggressive message. This it didn't happen when it comes to face-to-face working environment. But when it comes to a more virtual or digital working environment, and this happened. And this is also considered as bullying to certain employee. And I think what is very important is, again, going back to the HR, because I think when it comes to the workplace policy, that is something that I think HR department should recognize in terms of the digital bullying and how they can also make sure that people know how and where to report if such digital form of bullying happen even at the workplace.
Okay, time for us to head into another break here, folks. Today's show, we're talking about the perception and attitude of Malaysians towards workplace bullying and other things. It's based on a recent report released by Ipsos, which suggests 2/3 of Malaysians or their family have faced bullying, primarily in schools and workplaces. We'll be right back after these messages here on BFM 89.9, the business station.
Breakfast for Masters, BFM 89.9.
BFM 89.9, the business station. Welcome back to The Workplace. It is the show where we tap into insights to help empower your people and to elevate your organization. The insights that we're tapping into today, of course, are from Ipsos. It's a recent report which suggests that 2/3 of Malaysians or their family have faced bullying, primarily in schools and workplaces. And we're going through this report and some of the findings with Xiaofang. She is the Senior Client Officer at Ipsos Malaysia. She's giving us the data points and some of that stuff. On the other side of things is Hazel Doshi, the organizational psychologist and CEO at O-Psych, who's giving us perhaps some of the solutions to some of the stuff that we're talking about today. Let's look at that then, Hazel. Another insight reports that most victims take no formal action, whether it's at school, work or online. They just quietly just let it happen. What do you think are some early behavioral signs or patterns, that leaders and HR teams should start looking out for to help detect bullying before it actually escalates? Because often they can be quite subtle.
Yeah. It's subtle at the same time. extremely loud if you pay attention to it. It's, for example, somebody just not speaking up consistently, slowly withdrawing. Every part of your being, if you're a leader and you know your people, and if you're a team member and you know your people, you would be able to see it more in that person than that person themselves. It would be muted participation online. Anytime anyone is on mute and anyone doesn't want to show their face, definitely something to watch out for significantly. Could even be a shift in communicational tone. And the other one is suddenly have to take a lot of sick leaves, a lot of stomach ache, and being there but not really being there. That is something that you could observe within the individual. But as a leader, you want to also observe what is going on at the team, because
the dynamics of the team.
Exactly. So in the People at Work Index, bullying actually doesn't only the two most cited perpetrators would be, number one, the boss, and number two, colleagues. So within the colleagues or at the team level, it would be similar to what you said earlier, informational gatekeeping. So just withdrawing information or digital exclusion. I mean, the horror of how you could have multiple WhatsApp groups that is Team A minus 2 people, Team A minus 3 people, Team A without anyone but only 2 people. So digital exclusion is so prevalent, and then it adds up to who goes with who for lunch and who you will never allow to for lunch. Very, very like juvenile kind of behavior. Jokes, I think, are the most subtle but obvious form of attacking anyone publicly, and a growing tension in feedback. You would see this. It's very subtle, but it's very, very obvious. If you just ask yourself, is there something wrong with something that my people or the entire team is going through? You'll be able to find that out. But one of the things that, even as a psychologist, is tough is that some people are just so good at looking happy.
Right.
And they're so consistent in their outplay. I don't know, it's like a genetic thing where they just always look like they're smiling and they're okay. That even as a psychologist, we don't know what is actually going on behind that person's mind or smile. And so the best way to do this is to actually take, so you've got, I believe, Ministry of Health over here, or Ministry of Manpower. They've got an assessment for psychosocial risk, which is basically, or even at the People at Work Index, is basically a survey just to get everyone to list down it's like a survey form of what are the psychosocial risk or the stressors they experience. One of it is bullying, threats of violence, actual violence, sexual harassment. So I was with a team recently, and the leader had attended a workshop on psychological safety. The leader was like, my team is awesome. They love me, obviously. The team is like, we love the boss. But this person has a lot of influence, a lot of power. And the reason why they called us in was because what happened was that they took that leader's face and they put it up on social media, only because that person had such high power quotient in the organization that everybody was just saying really nice things about that person. So they took that leader's face and they put a snout on it. And you can only imagine in Malaysia how much more complex it becomes when you use a snout. They superimpose a snout on that person's face and put it on a social media platform and then started circulating it. And when we ran the People at Work Index, we found out that department had the highest level of verbal abuse, bullying, and sexual harassment as well. So it was only when we did people wouldn't come out. So it's only when you do it's a systemized way of identifying risks early on that you can find out. And it was like red alert when we did that assessment. And I'm like, why is it that while we want organizations to perform and outperform, there will be risk because, there's time theft, meaning there's not enough time, and people's behaviors become a little bit more toxic in the pursuit of excellence. So therefore, it's not just performance that you should measure, but the risk that comes in high performance environments as well.
Let me just interrupt you there and just ask you then. Let's say, for example, quickly, if you have an identified bad apple within that particular team, what's the solution to that? I mean, is it to cut them out entirely, or is it to attempt to retrain them or help them rethink what their behavior is like? Because if you're getting feedback from that team and saying this is the person that's causing the problems, and it's identified, what happens then?
Yeah, so there is a process that we take, but one thing that we will never do or we try not to do is to take an approach that is psychologically unsafe. because that's the entire antithesis of what we're trying to promote within the organization. So really encouraging it from a problem point of view rather than a person point of view, that, hey, it seems to be a huge problem that this team is experiencing. We'd just like to have a very, very strong and clear and a safe conversation about the incidents that you'll have been experiencing. We want to remain very curious about why this happened. So in the case of my team member who was telling me about what happened, it was about the word sex that is used instead of gender. And that person said the number of times that rather than the gender. And so we just want to know. And that person has told us that it's because that person is just so anti the question about gender. It's like, why is that even important to the world these days? So being curious about it and then asking all parties, what is the right thing to do right now? Now, all this can work when they're not clinically ill. Right? If you're clinically ill, if you're like a clinical sociopath, if you're a clinical psychopath, it's never going to work. And in which case, talking will never solve the issue. But in most cases, you can always have a very safe but brave conversation, because that will tell you how to solve the next case and the case after that is yet to happen but will surely happen.
I think those two words, safe and brave, is hit the nail right on the head there. Saufan, I need to move over to you for a little while. In the findings, it suggests that Malaysians expect schools, families, and the Ministry of Education to lead this fight against bullying. That's what we're hearing, but only about half mentioned employers or HR departments. Does this show then that the public still has or sees workplace bullying as a lesser concern, or that accountability is shifting elsewhere?
Well, I think after our conversation, I think everyone is sure that, workplace bullying is not something that which is less serious. But I think it's more about how actually people view the responsibility when it comes to the workplace bullying. Right. So I think when it comes to bullying, a lot of time we often still associate bullying with the younger environments like schools. But for bullying at the workplace, however, it might not yet be, I would say, recognized as a structural issue. It usually seen as a personal issue. Hence, that's it's not an issue that employer should manage. I think that is one of the situation or keep observation when it comes to the workplace bullying. But having said that, I think I'm also glad to see that there is I think a continual growth in terms of the initiative of well-being and also the inclusivity in a lot of organizations and also the workplace. So I believe that all these initiatives will help to shift the accountability slowly back to the organization or even the HR department.
Okay. One final question to the two of you then. If we want leaders to kind of step up, and one practical step that can help leaders understand that speaking up needs to be something that is normal, and bullying in any form will not be tolerated. What's one simple step that leader could take within their team or within their organization to start this ball rolling? Saufan.
Well, I think there are many things that can be done, but frankly, personally, I strongly feel that there are many forms of bullying happens just because of lack of understanding of what respect really means. So, whether it's a respect for differences, respect for maybe opinions, or even for personal boundaries. So I think a very simple but yet very powerful step that leaders can take to consistently model the respectful behavior is how they speak and how they give a feedback, and most importantly, how they resolve the conflicts. So I think when the people see that respect is really valued in the organization and is led by the leaders from top, it will naturally create the culture that which they feel that is safe to speak up, and eventually there's no place for bullying happen in the organization.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hetal?
I think for me, it would be two things, but I'll share the first one more critically. Measurement is critical. What gets measured gets done. And it's a very explicit question. Have you, in the past 12 months, experienced bullying, sexual harassment, threats of violence, actual violence in the workplace? And when that gets measured, you can see the look of leaders when they get their own team reports. And there's no leader that I've known till today that when they see that there's experience of bullying, threats of violence, they don't know whether they are the ones that perpetrate it, but under no circumstance do they want that to happen. That's the leaders that I've met. And then absolutely like what you've said earlier, when we bring teams together that have higher rates, because in Malaysia right now, the rates that we have is 13% in an organization, meaning 1 in 10, 1 in 13, for example. So when we bring them together, it's a shocker to see how much of difficulty people experience having a conversation to the right person at the right time about the conversation that they want to have. It takes up to 13 minutes before a first word is actually articulated. So when they actually have that conversation and then they measure it again, and the entire technique is all about psychologically safe but brave conversations for greater innovation and productivity. And then you measure again, and then you see a 10% increment. And then the entire team celebrates the fact that they were going through something, they learned how to talk it out, they're in a much better position, and a celebration all around for everyone. And then it's just literally like we have never been educated on how to have a conversation that is safe yet brave.
Okay. That's a lot to process for today. Thank you so much for your time, Sao Phang and Hazel. Thanks so much for that. Well, there we go then, folks. That was Sao Phang, Senior Client Officer at Ipsos Malaysia, and Hazel Doshi, Organizational Psychologist and CEO at O-Psych. If you missed any part of this conversation, you can catch a podcast on our website, of course. We were talking about a recent report released by Ipsos, which suggests that 2/3 of Malaysians or their family have faced bullying, primarily in schools and workplaces. Hopefully this conversation can go towards helping with some of that. I am Rich Bradbury. Keep it here on BFM 89.9, the business station.
You have been listening to a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station. For more stories of the same kind, download the BFM app.